Okay, so today I have this one for you. Now, this was a book I bought a long time ago, back in about, well, it was published in 1995, so I think I bought it, well, 95, 96. And this one I thought was a bit of a groundbreaker at the time, and not just at the time, but even today, and I'll tell you why. This book is one of the first books, I believe, that ever tried to integrate Wicca and the Kabbalah. And so, let's take a look inside. Now, I've got a few videos in the making at the moment, but none of them are quite ready just yet, and I don't want to rush them. So, I thought we'd take a look at this book. Now, this was a very important book for me, and as I said earlier on in the introduction, it was groundbreaking then, and I believe it's still groundbreaking today. And you can still buy this book on Amazon. I think when I checked it, it was £12.95. But to buy it second hand on eBay, this will cost you anything from £15 to £20. Go figure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the book. And the full title is, as you can see there, Between the Worlds, Witchcraft and the Tree of Life, a program of spiritual development, and it's by Stuart Myers. And as I said, it's available on Amazon for around £12.95. So I can't tell you what it is in American dollars, but I would suspect it is somewhere between $12 and $15, because in my experience I've found that what we pay for in pounds in this country, you pay dollars for over there. And there's not a lot of difference between when it comes to books. So as I said in the introduction, this book is quite groundbreaking insofar as it integrates the Kabbalah with Wicca and witchcraft. And what he says here, Between the Worlds offers a thorough training program for beginning and intermediate practitioners that is the best possible introduction to Kabbalistic magic yet. A book of shadows with lessons, exercises and rituals drawn upon both the traditional teachings of Gardnerian Wicca and the Kabbalah to make it easy for you to integrate these systems into a way of life. So that's the basic idea of the book. Let's skip over and have a look inside the book. And the first thing to say again, which is quite annoying to me, is that this book has no index. I'm sorry, but I like to have an index, so when I'm doing my research I can quickly and easily look things up. Okay, so let's move on to the contents. And we can see the contents here. And one thing I do want to point out here is Appendix 1. The book is worth it for Appendix 1 alone. Because Appendix 1 is all about the Sephiroth. And so if we go to page 195 and we can see, well then, where's my page numbers? 195. Oh, this is it, yeah. So it's got a really good section describing each of the Sephiroth, and it has its own unique artwork which shows the magical image for each Sephiroth, and we see all the attributes of the Sephiroth explained here. So that's Kether and Hokmah. Or I'll try to keep my hands out the way. And Bina, one of my favourites, Bina, the dark one. And Hesed, Gibra, and you can see the kind of thing it's got. Now, if you're not familiar with the Kabbalah, a lot of this won't make any sense to you right now, but this is excellent for a quick look up when you want to work with a particular Sephiroth. And here it's even got magical uses of the reason why you would use that particular Sephiroth, which is usually lacking in most books on the Kabbalah that I've seen. And Tifereth, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malkut, and they are the 10 Sephiroth, or Sephra. So, let's go back to the table of contents. And you can see it's quite a well-used book. Well, it's, how much? Almost 20 years old now. So, he starts off with a chapter on creating sacred space. Then moves on to working with the elements. And chapter 3 is planting the tree, so understanding the Kabbalah. And then nourishing the tree. Chapter 5 is rising on the plains, so that's moving between the Sephiroth and the paths between each of the Sephiroth. And chapter 6, creating magical ritual. Chapter 7, discovering the tides of life. And chapter 8, honouring the moon and the sun. But what we'll do, we will dig in and we'll start with creating sacred space, because you can see that when we actually get in here, that this book is quite in depth. And for somebody who's coming from a nature-based system, wanting to know a little bit more about the Kabbalah or ceremonial magic, then this is really an excellent book. So, chapter 1, creating sacred space. And so what I like about this chapter is how in depth it goes. Now, yes, he's creating sacred space, so casting a circle and purifying that circle, but he goes in really deep, and he has a couple of exercises for those that are first starting, and he's got these exercises in regards to becoming aware. So I guess that's really becoming aware of your spirituality. I guess perhaps you might say the shadow world. So he has some exercises in here to, well, let's have a look. Now light the candle and begin staring into its flame. Allow critical thinking process to end. If thoughts arise in your mind, let them quietly float away. Become aware of the candle flame and the shadows it casts around the room. So it's getting you into the right state of mind. And he has 2 exercises that I think if you're first starting in any part of Wicca or ceremonial magic, then it's well worth going through these exercises. It's almost introducing you to altered states of consciousness. Now, as you can see, it's quite in depth. Then he moves along to self-cleansing. And he talks a bit about casting the circle, and he tells you how this should be done. Witches must learn how to treat consciousness. Our awareness of things, our perceptions that make up the artistic materials we have to create on the astral plane. So he says, imagine a bright ball of light expanding from within your heart area until you have a sphere of light extending roughly 9 feet all about you. And then he goes on to say, walk to the northern edge of your circle and traditionally the place of darkness and mystery. Then he goes on to, once you've drawn your circle, he describes the various elements: fire, water, air, earth, and then he gives us both the banishing and invoking pentagrams for each of the elements, which is very well worth knowing. But however you want to do your cleansing, the good thing is that there's probably more information in here than you actually need, which is a good thing. That's far better than having bits missing, which is extremely annoying with a lot of books. And you're left trying to put the pieces together. So here we go, he goes around the circle doing the purifications. So it's at this point in time that the book starts to introduce us to the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. And we're told that there were 3 veils of negative existence: Ein Sof and Ein Sofer, meaning void, no limit, and limitless light. Then we start to go on and talk about some of the Sephra, such as Keter and Chokmah. Now, this brings us to perhaps what I consider to be the biggest problem with trying to integrate a system such as the Kabbalah, which is a Jewish mystical system, into a belief system that's based on the natural world. In my view, the two things are completely incompatible. So I suppose the question really is, how do we really integrate two completely different belief systems? One that revolves around the natural world, and the other that places man at the head of everything in the world and places no real importance on the natural world. So how do we get these two things to work together? And this, I think, is the big problem. If you're wanting to integrate the Kabbalah, and I really do think it's well worthwhile, because some of the concepts are really quite powerful. And so what I would suggest you do is to start looking at the tree of life, and before going through any of these exercises, start mapping out your own deities and your own pantheon to the tree of life. Now, to get you started on that, a little while ago, I did a video called Building Your Own Pantheon. And I'll stick a link to it up there, and I'll also pop it down in the description. And so if you do that, then that will allow you to use some of these important concepts, and powerful concepts, I believe powerful concepts, along with your own belief system, and using deities from the natural world. So then I think that makes this a very workable system. Okay, so then moving on, we get some exercises in working with the tree and integrating the tree of life into your practice. And you can see there's an exercise for invoking the goddess.
I don't know that.
Thank you, Alexa. Maybe she can help with some other things. Then we have another exercise here, or a description of the sacred meal. Now we come to a chapter on working with the elements. And so we all know the elements: earth, fire, water, air, and not to forget the fifth. And what I like about this chapter is that we start in the scientific world, which of course is very important information for those of us that believe in the natural world. Then quite clearly we want to know how the natural world works. So we have a discussion on quantum physics and the atom before moving on to more exercises. So here we're talking about the four worlds, the 4 Kabbalistic worlds, and known in the Hebrew as Zilith, Briah, Yetzirah, and Isaiah, or the world of the world of emanation, the world of creation, the world of formation, and the world of action. And they're also known as the king scale, the queen scale, and different texts will call these two differently. Sometimes they're known as the emperor scale and the empress scale. I've seen it also the archangelic scale and the angelic scale. But anyway, he talks a bit on the four worlds. So this is quite a good book for anybody that wants to learn about the Kabbalah in practical terms. So even if you're not a Wiccan or not into nature-based belief systems, but you just want to learn the Kabbalah, this is an excellent book. It's probably one of the best I've come across for actually doing work with the Kabbalah and having loads of exercises. So it's an excellent book for learning to work with the Kabbalah. There we go into more detail on Hokmah, Bina, and all the other Sephra here. Lots of exercises. As you can see, there's lots and lots of exercises for working within the various spheres. Section on creating magical ritual, which I believe everybody should be creating their own personal rituals, because I think it's far more meaningful than just choosing one that somebody else has chosen. Of course, you can take others as a basis, but then you need to put into it your own beliefs and what's meaningful even for you. And then we talk about the basics of power. So I think we're going back into the natural based systems here. Somewhere there's the building the cone of power. I'm not quite sure exactly where. It talks about trance and how to get into trance states by various means. And so we got dancing, more exercises, chord magic. So yeah, we're definitely on the Wiccan side of things here now. It talks about the Great Rite. One thing I did want to point out as well, he's talking about building the cone of power here somewhere, which I found very interesting. I don't know if I can find it right now. Four worlds and the lunar cycles. and phases of the moon. And I suppose, what are we talking about with phases of the moon? When they're good for doing certain rituals. Moving into the Sabbats, which we all know and love. Honouring the moon and the sun. Right. Okay, so who's this book for? I would say this book is aimed primarily at those people that already know a little about Wicca and want to expand and bring the power of the Kabbalah into their system. I think that's who this is primarily aimed at. I also think that it's a very good practical workbook for those who are just interested in the Kabbalah, full stop. The only downside I'd say about this book is that for those who are working within or working with natural-based earth religions or nature-based earth religions, is that, as I've mentioned before, I'm not sure that the Judaic system and nature-based earth religions are completely in sync. And so that is a bit of a problem. However, the concepts of the Kabbalah, I believe, are sound and can be used with this system if you look towards utilizing your own deities instead of using the ideas of the angels and the archangels and such like. Okay, for me that won't work. So for me, I use those deities from the Celtic Pantheon that I know and I have studied, and those mean something to me. And as I said, the link will be down below for you to go and have a look at that video to see how I did that. So down below, not below there, below here somewhere. Anyway, in the comments, not the comments, in the description. So I think it's an extremely good book. As I said, I think it's groundbreaking. I think it's an excellent book for those wanting to learn the Kabbalah. And I think for somebody that is a Wiccan or pagan, then this book is a great step forward to start to introduce the Kabbalah into your belief system and adapt it. I do think you need to adapt it. But then on the other hand, I think that the way this book is, it gives you the Kabbalah the way it was devised. And so that's important to understand that. But then we take it to the next level and we adapt this with our nature-based deities that we all know and love. So that's it for this book, Between the Worlds. I think it's well worth having a look at. It's by Stuart Myers, and I think that a lot can be gained from this book. So with that, I'll see you again very soon on the next one.